As this course comes to a close, it becomes very clear that campaigns for social change are far more than simple advertisements, slogans, or social media trends. They are intentional efforts designed to influence the way people think, feel, and act while also shaping the policies, behaviors, and accountability of institutions. Throughout this course, I've had the opportunity to study a variety of campaigns addressing a wide range of social issues, from inequality, mental health stigma, to domestic violence and the rights of Indigenous people. Reflecting on these campaigns now allows me to analyze them holistically, not only considering the immediate impacts but also societal and institutional implications. In this video, I'll examine 3 campaigns for social change in depth: Canada's Indigenous Rights Campaign, Winds of Change, the Let's Talk Day, and the It's Not Okay campaign. Although each of these campaigns address a very different issue, they are connected by a shared goal of influencing public attitudes, encouraging community action, and prompting institutions to respond to social challenges. Analyzing them together illustrates that societal change is complex, slow, and imperfect, but deeply necessary for creating more equitable societies. Canada's Winds of Change campaign is a prime example of a campaign that covers complex issues through education, advocacy, and ethical engagement. The campaign's overarching goal was to raise awareness about the ongoing impact of colonialism in Indigenous communities and to support these communities in advocating for justice and self-determination. Unlike campaigns that frame Indigenous issues as historical or symbolic, Winds of Change emphasize that the effects of colonial policies and practices are very much alive today. Indigenous communities continue to face systemic inequalities such as access to clean water, land rights, education, and political representation. In addition, environmental degradation resulting from resource extraction and broken treaty obligations remains a pressing concern for many communities. The campaign's message was clear. Reconciliation is not just about acknowledging history or offering apologies. It requires concrete action to address systemic barriers, recognize Indigenous sovereignty, and respect Indigenous voices. This focus on long-term change rather than temporary awareness distinguishes Winds of Change as a campaign that attempts to influence both public attitudes and institutional structures. The campaign employed a strategy centered on education, storytelling, and advocacy. Recognizing that many Canadians are unfamiliar with the history and ongoing realities of Indigenous life, they used written materials, discussion guides, videos, and community events to provide a deepened understanding of these issues. Central to the campaign's approach was ensuring that Indigenous voices were prioritized. Leaders, activists, and community members were encouraged to share their own stories rather than having non-Indigenous organizations speak on their behalf. This ethical approach not only enhanced credibility but also ensured that the message resonated emotionally, making it more likely to influence public attitudes and behavior. Personal stories were especially effective as they highlighted the lived experience of Indigenous people, including struggles with poverty, marginalization, and environmental threats, while also emphasizing resilience, activism, and cultural preservation. For instance, one component of the campaign included testimonials from Indigenous youth about how land disputes or environmental decline directly affected their communities. These stories created an emotional connection that went beyond statistics, reminding Canadians that the issue affects real people and real families. In addition to education, advocacy formed a critical part of the campaign. They encouraged Canadians to support Indigenous-led initiatives, attend events, engage in discussions, and hold government and corporate entities accountable. By partnering with churches, social justice groups, and grassroots organizations, the campaign illustrated that meaningful social change requires collective effort and shared responsibility rather than focusing on one high-profile event. The campaign emphasized long-term processes and continuous reflection, acknowledging that reconciliation is an ongoing process that demands continuous commitment. This approach reflects the fundamental understanding that social change is not instant. It requires patience, persistence, and thoughtful action over time. Furthermore, the campaign facilitated workshops in schools and universities to educate younger generations, highlighting the importance of early engagement in fostering long-term societal change. By equipping youth with knowledge and tools for advocacy, Winds of Change attempted to create a ripple effect that could extend beyond the immediate audience. When examining the impact of Winds of Change, it is clear that the campaign achieved success in raising awareness and fostering dialogue, particularly among faith-based communities and social justice advocates. It strengthened relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous allies and kept Indigenous rights at the forefront of public discussion. However, the campaign's reach was somewhat limited as its reliance on educational materials and community engagement meant that it primarily reached audiences already interested in social justice. This limitation suggests that while awareness was increased within certain circles, more broader public engagement and pressure on institutions remained the same. In terms of institutional change, the campaign did not directly lead to new policies or legislation, but it contributed to a climate that supports accountability, providing indirect momentum for the implementation of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call to action. By educating people about Indigenous land rights and environmental concerns, the campaign also helps sustain public pressure on government bodies and corporations to act responsibly. Additionally, the campaign's emphasis on a community-led advocacy inspired local initiatives such as petitions to protect sacred sites and efforts to ensure Indigenous representation in municipal decision-making processes, demonstrating that even small-scale campaigns can have some outcomes over time. Ethically, Winds of Change stands out for its thoughtful and careful approach. The campaign avoided corporate sponsorship, which preserved its integrity and focused on social justice rather than profit. It maintained an emphasis on Indigenous voices and perspectives, resisting the temptation to frame issues solely from a non-Indigenous viewpoint. One potential limitation, however, was the campaign's association with faith-based organizations, which could have unintentionally influenced messaging through Western moral frameworks. If I were directly involved in the campaign, I would have worked to expand its digital reach through partnerships with Indigenous youth creators and influencers. This would have created visibility for younger generations, help foster a deeper engagement, and provide more opportunities for meaningful action. Additionally, I would have introduced interactive online platforms to encourage dialogue and direct participation in advocacy efforts, helping to broaden the campaign's impact beyond its traditional audience. By increasing digital engagement, the campaign could have reached more Canadians who might not have prior interest in Indigenous rights but could have been motivated to act once made aware. In contrast, Bell Let's Talk Day demonstrates a different approach to social change, one that emphasizes mass engagement and visibility. Its main goal is to reduce stigma surrounding mental health and encourage open, ongoing conversations about mental health issues. The campaign's central message is simple: talking about mental health matters, and silence can worsen struggles. Unlike Winds of Change, which focuses on in-depth education and ethical advocacy, Bell Let's Talk relies heavily on broad participation and public visibility to create impact. Its success lies in turning abstract awareness into concrete participation, encouraging Canadians to actively engage in discussions and actions that support mental health. Bell Let's Talk employs a unique strategy that quantifies engagement into tangible contributions. Every year, Bell donates a set amount of money for every text message, phone call, or social media post that includes the campaign hashtag. This approach encourages millions of people to participate, even in small ways, and transforms public engagement into social benefits. The campaign also leverages celebrity endorsements, media coverage, and collaborations with schools and workplaces to amplify its message. By turning mental health into a nationwide topic, Bell Let's Talk normalizes discussion and reduces stigma on a large scale. Notably, this campaign engages all audiences across age groups and demographics, using social media trends and influencer partnerships to appeal to younger generations, while reaching older adults through traditional media, creating a multi-layered outreach strategy. The campaign has been highly successful in several key areas. It has raised hundreds of millions of dollars for mental health research programs and community projects. It has encouraged schools and workplaces to recognize mental health as a legitimate concern and to implement wellness programs. Perhaps most importantly, it has increased public willingness to discuss mental health, helping individuals feel less isolated and more empowered to seek support. By creating national conversation around mental health, the campaign has achieved measurable change in attitudes and awareness. In addition, Bell Let's Talk has inspired other organizations to adopt a similar mental health initiative, demonstrating an effect that extends beyond immediate campaigns. However, Bell Let's Talk also faces criticism and ethical challenges. One major concern is the potential conflict of interest coming from corporate sponsorship. Bell, as a large corporation, has been criticized for workplace practices that some argue undermine employee and mental health, which can make the campaign appear more like marketing than genuine advocacy. Another ethical concern is the use of engagement metrics to trigger donations, which risk framing mental health as a trend or performance rather than a serious issue requiring solutions. While the campaign successfully gets attention and funds, critics argue that it does not sufficiently address the underlying challenges such as funding shortages, accessibility of mental health services, and systemic inequalities that contribute to mental health issues. If these deeper issues remain unaddressed, the awareness raised may not lead to meaningful long-term change, showing that social change campaigns must consider both visibility and structural impact. Institutional change resulting from Bell Let's Talk is significant but uneven. Schools and workplaces have adopted wellness programs, awareness days, and mental health policies. However, deeper systemic challenges such as improvements in healthcare and infrastructure or equitable access to care remain largely unaddressed. Technology, particularly social media, has been central to the campaign's success, allowing messages to reach millions quickly and encourage active engagement. If I were involved in this campaign, I would focus on transparency about Bell's internal policies and use the platform to advocate for systemic healthcare reforms, ensuring that public awareness is paired with structural solutions and not just symbolic gestures. Additionally, I would create partnerships with mental health organizations to ensure that funds generated by engagement translate into support that is accessible and sustainable. The It's Not Okay campaign provides a powerful perspective on social change by addressing domestic violence and emphasizing both societal norms and collective responsibility. The primary goal of this campaign is to change the way society perceives and responds to domestic violence. The message is clear and uncompromising, that violence is unacceptable under any circumstance and everyone has a role to play in prevention. By framing domestic violence as a societal issue rather than a private family matter, the campaign challenges the long-standing belief that such problems should remain hidden. This is particularly important because domestic violence affects not only the immediate victims but also children, families, and the wider community. The campaign stresses that silence contributes to ongoing abuse, placing responsibility not only on perpetrators but also on bystanders and institutions. The campaign uses a multi-layered approach to achieve its goals. Television advertisements demonstrate realistic and relatable domestic violence situations, ensuring that viewers can identify with the scenarios. For example, some ads show subtle forms of abuse such as controlling behavior or emotional manipulation, which are often overlooked. By highlighting on these forms of abuse, the campaign educates the public that domestic violence is not only physical but also emotional, financial, and psychological. In addition, the campaign partners with community organizations to provide educational workshops, helplines, and support victims. These programs give victims and bystanders practical tools to respond effectively, demonstrating that social change requires not just awareness but also useful strategies.
Importantly, It's Not Okay emphasizes collective responsibility. The campaign encourages friends, family, and communities to intervene safely, offer support, and report incidents when necessary. This approach challenges the traditional notion that domestic violence is solely a private matter, promoting the idea that preventing abuse is a community-wide obligation. In doing so, the campaign fosters a sense of social accountability, reminding people that ignoring abuse only allows it to continue. Schools and workplaces have also been encouraged to implement training and policies to recognize the signs of abuse, support victims, and create safe environments. By focusing on education, prevention, and institutional responsibility, It's Not Okay addresses multiple layers of social change from individual behaviors to systemic practices. The campaign has achieved notable success. Public awareness about domestic violence has increased significantly and attitudes have shifted towards zero tolerance. Reports to authorities have risen, suggesting that victims and bystanders feel more confident in reaching out. Additionally, the campaign's use of simple wording, culturally sensitive materials, and diverse representation has made it relevant to a broad audience, including marginalized communities. Despite these successes, the campaign faces challenges similar to other social change initiatives. While awareness has grown, behavioral change is gradual, and the overall acts of domestic violence has not dropped dramatically. This underscores the difficulty of translating education and advocacy into immediate societal change, especially when deeply ingrained cultural attitudes and systemic barriers persist. Technology plays a crucial role in the campaign's success. Social media platforms, online resources, and helplines provide accessibility avenues for education, reporting, and support. Digital tools help allow victims to seek help discreetly, share experiences, and connect with support networks while also allowing bystanders to learn how to respond appropriately. The campaign has effectively mixed traditions and digital media, ensuring that its message reaches diverse audiences across age groups and locations. This strategic use of technology demonstrates that the choice of platform can significantly affect the reach, engagement, and impact of a campaign. Ethically, It's Not Okay prioritizes authenticity and inclusivity. Campaign materials are designed to avoid exaggerations, victim blaming, or stigma. However, challenges remain. For example, representing all cultural perspectives adequately is difficult in a country with diverse populations, and there is always the risk that some communities may feel excluded or misrepresented. If I were directly involved with the campaign, I would work to further expand inclusivity by consulting directly with people from marginalized communities, ensuring that the message can resonate broadly. Also, I would create interactive digital workshops where participants can practice safe intervention strategies, helping translate awareness into skills. Expanding community feedback mechanisms would also ensure that the campaign evolves with the needs and experience of those it serves. When considering the impact of all three of these campaigns together, several connections can be made. Each campaign recognizes that awareness is the first step toward meaningful change, but awareness alone is not enough. Winds of Change prioritizes ethical education and indigenous voices. Bella's Talk focuses on mass participation and visibility, and It's Not Okay emphasizes shifting societal norms and collective responsibility. All three campaigns also illustrate the challenges of achieving institutional change. While Bella's Talk has influenced schools and workplaces to adopt mental health policies, and It's Not Okay has prompted institutions to develop domestic violence training and policies, Wind of Change shows that systemic change, particularly in government policies or corporate accountability, often takes longer and requires persistent advocacy. Another connection is the role of technology in media. Winds of Change utilizes digital educational materials to reach targeted audiences. Bella's Talk leverages social media to engage millions nationwide, and It's Not Okay combines television and digital platforms and interactive online resources to provide support and education. Each campaign demonstrates that the choice of platform directly influences engagement, effectiveness, and the ability to reach diverse audiences. Furthermore, ethical considerations differ across campaigns. Winds of Change avoids corporate sponsorship to maintain integrity. Bella's Talk navigates tensions between corporate interests and advocacy, and It's Not Okay works continuously to ensure inclusive and authentic representation. Finally, all three campaigns highlight meaningful social change requires more than awareness. It demands ethical leadership, community engagement, institutional accountability, and long-term commitment. They demonstrate that social change is slow and sometimes uncomfortable, but still essential. Together, these campaigns provide lessons for creating effective campaigns, prioritizing ethical communication, including the voices of affected communities, and combining awareness with practical action. They also show that campaigns must be adaptable, listening to feedback, and evolving over time to remain relevant and effective. They teach that individual responsibility is key because even small actions like sharing a post, attending an event, or speaking up can contribute to broader societal change. In conclusion, Winds of Change, Bella's Talk, and It's Not Okay show the diverse strategies, challenges, and impacts of campaigns for social change, each offering unique lessons about how society can address pressing issues. Winds of Change emphasizes ethical advocacy and prioritizes indigenous voices, highlighting the importance of listening, respecting lived experiences, and addressing historical injustices in a thoughtful and informed way. Bella's Talk demonstrates the power of mass engagement and visibility, showing how a campaign can reach millions of people, encourage conversation, and turn awareness into tangible action through social media, school programs, and workplace initiatives. It's Not Okay highlights societal norms, collective responsibility, and institutional accountability, teaching us that social change is not only about individual awareness, but also about creating systems and communities that actively prevent harm and protect the vulnerable. By examining these campaigns together, it becomes very clear that no single campaign can achieve perfect results, but thoughtful, ethical, and persistent efforts can create meaningful, lasting impact. Collectively, they reveal that social change is a complex process that requires awareness, action, and sustained commitment over time. They also demonstrate that campaigns must be both adaptable and inclusive, able to respond to diverse audiences, cultural contexts, and evolving to societal needs. Each campaign in its own way reminds us that meaningful change is possible when communities, institutions, and individuals work together with empathy, responsibility, and determination, even if progress is slow or imperfect. From a Catholic perspective, these campaigns also align with key teachings about human dignity, solidarity, and moral responsibilities. The Catholic faith emphasizes that every person deserves respect and protection and calls it on believers to act on behalf of the marginalized, the oppressed, and those who cannot advocate for themselves. Winds of Change, for example, resonates with the Catholic principle of social justice by promoting advocacy for Indigenous rights and encouraging reconciliation, which involves not only acknowledging past wrongs but actively working towards equity and justice. Bellets taught the lines of the Catholic value of compassion, reminding us to care for the mental and emotional well-beings of others and to reduce stigma and isolation and suffering. It's Not Okay reflects on the call to protect the vulnerable, uphold human dignity, and challenge injustice in our communities, echoing the Catholic teaching that society has a moral responsibility to intervene against harm and to support victims of abuse. Ultimately, these campaigns teach that meaningful social change requires both individual and collective responsibility. They show that moral reflection, ethical engagement, and practical action are intertwined, and that communities together can grow stronger when guided by principles such as compassion, justice, and respect for human dignity. Principles deeply rooted in the Catholic faith. By learning from these campaigns, we can see that lasting impact comes from aligning awareness with action, from combining the voices of individuals and communities with influence of institutions, and from recognizing that true change happens when society acts together, guided by ethics, empathy, and faith-inspired values.